Hi everyone, it's your boy Zach, and so I've got this thing I do where I forget how it started, but I do this thing called Star Trek Discovery where I watch Star Trek Discovery while drinking whiskey, and it's actually a lot of fun. But I have a rule about never drinking on consecutive days. It's like that's the way you keep it casual, don't develop a problem. But anyway, I watched Star Trek 2009, the first Chris Pine movie. And I was talking about it with my buddy who's a big Trekkie, and we started talking about, what it feels like? I just watched Star Trek while drinking whiskey and just one of the shows, but it felt like they filmed this entire movie in order. And then about halfway through, everyone started drinking a lot. And oh my, what did I just watch? I just I had a whole like for the first half I was really enjoying it, and so I just had like a little sarcastic title in head. I was like, enlist in Starfleet and become an admiral within 4 to 5 years, because at one point, he's like, you could be you can be a captain in 4 years. He's like, I'll do it in three. It's like that's not real. So, for people who don't know, obviously Star Trek, the original series, in the '60s, and then they had a cartoon in the '70s, and then I think starting in '79 or '80, they started doing movies, which were okayly popular. Like one of the things that Star Trek movies always had a problem with the original cast, and then when the Next Generation cast started doing movies, is they would do okay, but they would always have like this ceiling on how well they did. So what they did, the producers at Paramount, I think, they just said, okay, fine. We know you consistently make like 80 million, so your budget's 35. So they could basically do whatever they want as long as they stayed in budget. And, kind of everyone was happy. Then it went away, and there was a whole bunch of crazy shenanigans with a corporation purposefully divesting itself of part of its asset. I don't understand that stuff. I've listened to Midnight's Edge explain it like 4 times, and I'm still confused. Anyway, in 2009, they came out with the J.J. Abrams Kelvin timeline, which has been 3 movies: Star Trek Into Darkness, and Star Trek Beyond. Now, I saw Star Trek shortly after. I just looked it up, and it said it came out in May of 2009. I was in Afghanistan. I got back late June, so I don't think I saw it in theaters. I probably saw it on Redbox or something like that. But the thing I remember about it is I had heard all, the kind of like frat trek, roasts. So I went in with really low expectations, and I generally liked it, but I also kind of brain dumped most of it. Now, Star Trek Into Darkness I love, and I've seen probably a dozen times. And that was also a movie I watched it to roast it because I heard all these bad things, but I freaking love Star Trek Into Darkness. But also that one I didn't see till like the year after it came out. So there was like 4 years since I saw the first one. And like I said, like whenever I would think about it, I would always think, like I generally enjoyed it while also not liking any of the Spock stuff or the Romulan stuff or the red goo stuff. And the weird thing is, like, that's the last 45 minutes of the movie. So the first hour and the first hour, I actually kind of loved. Now, it's dumb. It's dumb fun. Like, a lot of people have said that the Kelvin timeline is Star Trek for people who don't like Star Trek. And I don't think that's exactly true. It's Star Trek for people who kind of like Star Trek, which is a much bigger, percentage of the population than the people who like it. So, I've always kind of liked it. I didn't like the original series, but I liked some of the movies. I loved TNG. I remember not liking DS9 when I watched it when it first came out, but I started rewatching it, and I loved it. I don't care about Voyager, and I never watched Enterprise. I liked the TNG movies, first couple, and then they were terrible. And with the Kelvin movies, first one, it's kind of a draw. The second one I love, and the third one I hated. But anyway, so they spend a lot of time introducing, Kirk, the whole crew, except for Sulu and Chekhov, who are just kind of on the bridge already, so you don't get their origin. But even though it's dumb, I kind of like it. One of the things that I hate pun titles. I hate puns so much. I grew up and every single time a Star Trek movie came out, you'd see the reviewers saying, set phasers for fun. And I just wish they would just set phasers for, what is that setting where you can make your phaser explode? Self-destruct. But the other one is, I was going to say, Pace, the Final Frontier. Because one of the great things about at least the first two ones directed by J.J. Abrams is they have this incredible pace that lets you move. Every time your brain goes, wait, that's stupid, it's already on another scene. It doesn't even let your brain say, wait, that's stupid. All your brain says is, wait, that's stupid. And then you're into another scene. So your brain goes, okay, let's figure out what this scene. And, about a third of the scenes are solid. About a third of the scenes are kind of iffy. And then especially at the end, oh my gosh, it gets so bad. Like, at first I was really loving it, and then I just wanted to be over. Where do I start? So Chris Pine is great. A lot of people used to call him, call it frat Trek. And there are parts of his thing I don't like, specifically the Kobayashi Maru, and he's eating an apple, and I just want to smack him out of that chair. But overall, he's quite good. In a story that is kind of silly and stupid and makes no sense. Starfleet, which is an extreme meritocracy, it's basically Space Navy SEALs Harvard. It's just taking random people who get into bar fights because they've got gumption, and you can show up. You can just show up to a shuttle. I don't even think Kirk didn't even sign anything. He just saw, Captain Pike at a bar. He's like, enlist in Starfleet. You could be an officer in 4 years and have your own ship in 8. I'm like, what? What? First of all, that's not enlisting. That's commissioning. And second of all, what? Didn't you just meet him? What's going on? And then the people they do show in Starfleet already are like complete louts and idiots. They're getting in bar fights and they're like, just look stupid. The thing about Starfleet is, they have officers enlisted, but really everyone's an officer. Everyone is like highly educated. For people who don't know the military that well, enlisted is what you can do straight out of high school. All you need is a high school diploma or a GED. Officers generally require college most of the time. And then obviously the officers are in higher levels of command. But he joins, and one of the things is that the Kelvin timeline is for people who always laugh whenever someone says, beam me up, Scotty, in anything, not knowing that doesn't actually happen in the TV shows or movies. And like I said, it's not for people who hate Star Trek. It's for people who kind of like it and don't really know about it. So Kirk doesn't really act like Kirk barely ever did, but he acts like the normie consensus of what Kirk is like. Same thing with basically all the characters. They basically said, what does Joe Schmo and wife at Walmart think Kirk is like? It's like, oh, he's really cocky and he's always hitting on all the women and he's like, he has all these weird affectations. Like, oh, no. He's pretty straightforward commander all through the original series. He didn't start getting that like hammy until the later Star Trek movies. But they're basically doing like the Saturday Night Live version, but straight. But that was a parody and exaggeration. Then they've got Spock, who I really like. I really like Zachary Quinto's performance of it. They kind of flipped the script in a couple ways that don't make sense. He's dating Uhura, and that relationship is never quite believable. And then there's just like a lot of silly stuff. The funny thing is that now I'm gonna screw this up. As far as I know, it's shaken out that the Kelvin timeline and the Prime timeline from Star Trek Discovery are the same timeline, or am I wrong? Anyway, visually they match pretty well, but I still feel like Discovery is a lot better. Like, Discovery is weird sometimes, but it's not like stupid. Like, stupid. Like, all of the changing. I'm the. Oh, Pike's the captain. No, Spock's the captain. No, Kirk's the captain. Kirk gets freaking exiled and stranded on an ice planet, and then he sneaks his way back on. First of all, he was never supposed to be there. He was in academic suspension and not supposed to deploy. Bones sneaks him on there because every doctor's on the ship, so he has to take his patients. Or what the hell? Are you kidding me? And then like at one point he gets back and he sits in the ship, and they're like what? And they're like, well, Pike did appoint him first officer. It's like, yeah, but like a lot of stuff's happened since then. It wasn't a magic spell. We appointed him, but there's all these different rules, and they're like, what do you call? Older Spock says, "Oh, you can get him out of the command chair if you make him lose his emotions," and I was like, so Starfleet basically has a rule that's kind of like when you have a staring contest and whoever laughs first loses. Like, if I can make you angry, I get to be the captain. It's like, what the hell? This is stupid. But the thing is, more than half the movie is very enjoyable because they've got this great pace, and they got the very lively actors with a lot of charisma. Jeez. I almost got an ice cream headache going from watching Captain Marvel to this. I was like, oh, lead in movies can have charisma. Oh, I forgot that was real. But they're very charismatic there. They got the music blasting. I really like the composer, Michael Giacchino, something like that. They've got a great, a theme for the Kelvin Star Treks. And I really like the whole crew. That's why I like the second one when they kind of hit their stride. But oh my gosh! So I know there's a lot of people who hate Robert Orci and Alex Kurtzman and Damon Lindelof. I guess because of stuff related to that show Lost. But I never saw any of that show, so I don't really care. And they're like, oh, the Transformers movies. I hate them. Little bits and pieces are okay, but I hate those. So I don't really care. And like they were one of those guys or two of them did Prometheus, which I loved. Did Star Trek Into Darkness, which I love. So I'm like, and I think Alex Kurtzman is running Discovery, which I like a lot. So I'm kind of fine, but oh my gosh, that Romulan storyline with Nero is horrible. Like, how did that get into a finalized movie? It's not even like this is like a bad idea from a first draft. This is one of those things that when they're working out the beats, on a whiteboard, it just gets erased. You ever seen the thing where someone can't find the eraser, so they kind of pull their sleeve up and then use that to erase the whiteboard? That's what it needed. It needed sleeve eraser action. It's, oh God, what do I say? Nero is like a working man on a mining ship that's bigger than a planet. What are you mining? The universe? I just reworked a joke from Mike's to class. It's from Star Trek or Star Wars Phantom Menace, where they go into the power reactor on Alderaan. Alderaan? No, whatever planet. And he goes, what is this power? The universe? But anyway, there are these people on a mining ship that's freaking bigger than a planet. And then Romulus is going to explode. And then Spock's like, oh, I got a plan. I'm going to put some red goo near the exploding star, and that'll absorb the explosion. Excuse me, I have a question. Wow, we're in Star Trek Mike's to class Inception, because that's actually from a Star Trek movie from a Star Trek review. if you're gonna, oh god, if you're gonna use the red goo to create a black hole out of the star that was gonna explode and destroy Romulus, what were you gonna do with Romulus when everyone froze to death in 0.02 seconds afterwards? Like, and also, you're trying to save a whole planet. How come they sent just one guy who's like 160 years old? I know Vulcans are longer lived, but gee, Jehoshaphat. And then the black hole is a wormhole, and then they get sent in the past, and then they see the oh, how do I say this? So Nero hates Spock, which is kind of understandable, but Spock was legitimately trying. You would think he would just generally hate Starfleet, that they just sent one super old man to deal with it instead of sending a whole flotilla of ships. So then he finds the Kelvin and he blows it up for why? Hey, I hate you, Spock. I'm gonna get your co-worker's dad and kill him. What? I don't know, maybe they explained it in some little one line of dialogue, but then Kirk's born in a shuttlecraft. Hey, what if his whole dream in life was just to become a shuttlecraft pilot? Oh, that didn't really happen. So then they flash back to being him being a kid, and it's just weird on like 5 different levels. First of all, Chris Pine has kind of blondish hair, not really, that they colored to be kind of blondish, not really, because Shatner's hair was kind of blondish, not really, it was just light brown. So they take a kid who obviously doesn't have blonde hair, and then they give him really weird looking blonde hair. He also looks nothing like any version of Kirk, and then he's stealing a stepdad's car to drive it off of a cliff, and he's a crazy person, and they have these weird fascist, like, jackbooted robot cops. What's whatever? Let's go to a more logical scene. Captain Pike recruiting a guy he's never met to join Starfleet without signing any paperwork. It's like going to one of those free concerts that are put on by the city. Hey, we're doing Shakespeare in the park. No tickets. Just bring a blanket and sit on the ground. Or you could just sit directly on the ground without a blanket. What the hell? So Kirk joins Starfleet, and then we got to see him macking on chicks because people who have never seen Star Trek think Kirk was always macking on chicks constantly, which he absolutely was not. And then he gets in trouble for the Kobayashi Maru, which is... I remember getting really like butthurt the first time I saw this movie because Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan is one of my favorite movies ever. Definitely the best Star Trek movie. And the Kobayashi Maru is this really, really big deal. And it's just, there's this great, it's a very poignant thing that, Kirk can't handle losing, but, he cheated in a test that was going to test how you handle losing, and it's done very well. And then it's just done in this flippant way, like they're in a training simulator for a bridge of a starship, and obviously the windows are actually monitors, so then everything like fritzes out and then it comes back, and then he easily wins while eating an apple, but he's not even trying to hide that obviously he reprogrammed it. And then then he gets called into a disciplinary hearing where they call every single person in Starfleet to witness it. Now, usually disciplinary hearings are very private. Now, I do remember in boot camp, I went to Marine boot camp, and I do remember there was this punishment, and they literally got every single person to just watch this guy get, read out his punishment. And I know there's been some type of things, but it's, they usually say, a general leadership principle is that you praise in public and you basically punish in private, or you counsel or things like that. So then they're like, Then they're like, okay, you're gonna get kicked out of Starfleet. Although later Bone says you could appeal and they probably would let you stay, so that's not very dramatic. And then they got Tyler Perry there, and he's the, I don't know, the dean of Starfleet. And then someone hands him a little note, and he's like, hey, we're in a war. Every single person get on every single spaceship we have. Go right now. Go run, 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 run. Like, what? This is the stupidest shit ever. So then we get into some just plot shenanigans and we meet all the characters. And the first, like I said, the first hour and 15 minutes is actually pretty fun. If you're watching this on cable, this is an easy way. As soon as you see old Spock, just leave. The Romulan plan is stupid, and also their ship is ridiculous. Their ship is basically made of a bunch of randomly put together pieces. You know what it kept reminding me is in the 80s and 90s, Nickelodeon had these game shows for kids that were psychologically cruel. They would make these kids go through these obstacle courses that freaking Navy SEALs couldn't handle. And I'm not kidding. A kid would only win like once every 20 episodes. It was cruel. But they have this ridiculous ship that's the size of a planet that's mostly empty space inside. And then they don't even have floors or decks. It's literally just a random hodgepodge of metal plates that don't even seem to be welded down. Like, it's freaking stupid. I mean, they had a very large ship in Star Trek Into Darkness, the Executor or something like that. But they kind of explained it, you know. Oh, and then this giant ship is empty and has almost no crew. At least in, Into Darkness, they explained that the Section 31 was designed to, you run with a minimal crew. It's like, okay, fine. They didn't do that. There was like 6 guys. Let's not get into the whole stupid stuff that they get revenge on the person they hate's coworker's dad in the past. And then they just sit around for 25 years waiting for Spock to come through. Why did they think he was ever going to come through? Also, how come no one that got older? And how come no one ever quit? You'd think after like 2 years, the crew would have been like, what? Do we get shore leave? Do we get vacation? Can I go start a family? Maybe they all started families and like their kids grew up and went to school and college, and then they all like, they're like, hey. Then they had a little reunion. They're like, hey, we need to go back to our ship and see if Spock pops out. Yeah, that actually could have happened. They could have had whole families over there. Okay, so the stupidest part is at the end, they defeat the Romulan ship. Well, it's not even a Romulan Empire ship. It's just some mining ship with some guy who worked on a mining ship who went crazy. So then they defeat it fairly easily by inventing magical transwarp beaming that would make ships completely unnecessary. You wouldn't even need the ships. You could just transwarp beam people across the galaxy. Oh, there's an M-class planet on the other side of the galaxy. Let's just transwarp beam there. Just beam a shuttlecraft there and then whatever. It's stupid. But then they kind of easily defeat this ship and they put some red goo in it, which we've seen before that when you put it on the inside of like a tiny little drop on the inside of a planet, the whole planet collapses in like 30 seconds. Well, they put this huge blob of it inside this planet-sized ship, and then they ignite it, and then they have like a whole conversation. Like, the good guys get back to the Enterprise, and then Kirk's like, hey, well, we're Starfleet, we're still the good guys, so you're going to fall into this black hole, but we can teleport you out and save you. Then Nero's like, I'd rather die. And then this stuff makes no sense. So Kirk, when Nero goes, oh, we'd rather die, he didn't just go, okay, fine, and leave. Then he tells the people, everyone starts shooting, and they just all start shooting at the ship that is about to turn into a black hole in like 5 seconds. So they shoot it like a million trillion times, and then they're all like high-fiving each other. And then Kirk's like, mind you, there's literally a black hole like, I don't know, 20 kilometers away from the Enterprise. So it's pretty close. And then they start turning around, and then they're like, oh, hey, we can't get away at that black hole. It's like freaking 10 kilometers away now. And then Kirk's like, oh, go warp. And then they're like, we are So then they eject the warp cores to create an explosion that they ride like a surfboard instead of just being freaking nuked by it instantly. And then they escape with what? What kind of energy? They ejected their warp core. They're where were they by? Are they by Saturn? I don't know where they went. At one point, oh god, I didn't even get into the drilling rig. Oh Jesus. Sorry for taking the Lord's name in vain. So the frickin' mining ship that's as big as a planet has this really janky drill that they drop through the frickin' atmosphere, and it's all made of like rusted metal. And then it'll get to like through the atmosphere, and then it'll start shooting a beam down to drill things, I guess. Except for, guess what this drill also does? The drill also disrupts communication and prevents anyone from using transporter beams. What? Does it also stop tooth decay? Those are three completely different things. I can see a little bit of interference, with, like radio communications or something weird like that. You can't beam. Beaming technology, transporter technology does not work when you're shooting a laser out of a big rusty spike thing. What? Stupid. So anyway, the weird thing is, usually when I rewatch movies, I kind of go like, oh, it wasn't as bad as I remember. This one was both better and worse. Like I said, the first hour and a half was a lot of fun, and the last 45 minutes is insane. Oh, don't even get to me when they exile. God. So, Kirk gets in trouble, and then Spock is like, take him to the brig. And then Kirk goes crazy and like fights two security guys, and then takes one of their phasers. And then freaking Spock says, get him off my ship. So they shoot him in a freaking escape pod down to this ice planet. And he lands 14 kilometers away from a Starfleet outpost. It's just a research facility with two people in it, or two beings in it. And then he gets chased by a Gundark, whatever. And then he runs to a cave, and then there's freaking old Spock in the cave. And he goes, I was marooned here too, by Nero. And then later we find out that it kind of feels like he was marooned there like a while ago, at least a couple days ago. And then they're like, there's a Starfleet facility 14 kilometers away. Now, I'm not an expert on kilometers. I think 3 kilometers equal a mile. Maybe it's 2. But let's just say you can walk this 14 kilometers in a couple hours. What, 2 or 3 hours? So Spock was like 2 or 3 hours away from a Starfleet facility? Because I'm pretty sure Spock tells him, he goes, hey, let's head to that facility. And he just... What? What's going on? Now, you could have had one line of dialogue that says that they usually have insane storms here all the time, but weirdly enough, they just calm down right now so we can actually walk it. But he could have walked there in an afternoon, gone to the Starfleet, go, hey, I'm retired Starfleet. You need to call Starfleet and say that this guy's about to destroy Vulcan. And then they could have stopped it. Everything about this movie is stupid. But anyway, yeah. Oh, did I seriously talk for 20 minutes about Star Trek 2009? I guess I did. So anyway, thanks for watching. And I'll probably do another Star Trek Discovery tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Bye.